Ahoy, everybody, and welcome back to another awesome episode of Beyond the Bottom Line, the video show that takes you on a deep dive through the nonprofit world, sitting down with nonprofit leaders, executive directors, fundraisers, people in the space who you don't often see, but are really much the ones, making sure everything moves and shakes. And today we're sitting down with a really cool guy. His name is Ben Fefferman, and he works with an organization called Kosher for Less, a really cool concept, actually, which he's going to talk about on the show. And him and I connected on LinkedIn. I said, wow, dude, we should totally talk because you have a really interesting looking organization, and I'm sure you got a story to tell. So that's why we're here. We're sitting down today talking about Kosher for Less, learning more about the organization, who they are, what they're all about, and how they are helping so many families all over the greater Florida area when they need it most. So without further ado, let's dive into the show. But don't forget to like and subscribe to this episode on our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bottom Line Show, as well as you can watch this episode on our website, givesweet.com, and soon to be on Bravehearts TV, streaming live wherever your streaming TV apps get you. So, Ben, welcome to the show. How are you? What's going on? And what's your deal?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. So you have a very interesting, after we talked before, like, you were working in a different industry before you got into the nonprofit space. You were working in esports. So how did you
Yeah.
go from esports to fundraising?
Yeah, it's a great question. I kind of just landed into esports about 67 years ago. I was in Toronto doing some investment banking, and there was this idea to sort of spin off an esports company, which, if you're not familiar with the term esports, it means to play video games competitively. And we operated a string of location-based entertainment centers. So these are gaming venues where kids and teens, anyone can come in, they play on computers, they compete. There's lights, stage, production, broadcast, everything, and all a bunch of other sort of ancillary companies around that. And then I made the amazing move about 5 years ago to South Florida. And
Smart
from
move.
there, it was time to try something new and to move in a different direction. And I've always been a grassroots community organizer, and this is where I'm meant to be.
That's really cool. That is really, really cool. So tell me a little bit more about the organization, because like I said, we spoke about this before when we first met, and it is a pretty cool concept. So tell me a little bit more about the organization. Tell her, like, what do you guys do?
Yeah, sure. It's a great story, really, how I got connected with the organization. I was very upset that in my synagogue, in my community, well, not to name names. I'm not going to name names, but anyway, so that certain items that were needed for like religious observance were very overpriced, and it was making it hard for families to afford them. And the same thing happened with matzah at Passover. There was, the price was so high. So I started organizing just sort of private buys. I would reach out to a huge matzah distributor. I'd say, what, give me the best price sent to my driveway. Then I would pre-sale it to my community at cost, no profit, no markup, to make it affordable. And this happened for a couple years over the holidays, and that built up. And then eventually, someone introduced me to what was called the Miami Kosher Co-op, which was doing it on a much larger scale. It's basically taking the big profit out of kosher grocery stores, and making a model where everyone can afford kosher groceries, and that when you do order, it sort of puts more money back into the community by giving other people subsidies who need it more. So it's a very unique model of community ownership. Can sort of order what they want, have affordable prices, and then help their neighbor at the same time.
That's amazing. And it's crazy because the price of kosher food, for those who are watching, I'm an Orthodox Jew. I'm based in Israel. Ben is based in Florida. And, the price of kosher food is generally very high in general. And you have all these different grocery stores. A lot of them, for some strange reason, are super high-end grocery stores, yet most people are coming on food stamps and whatnot. And it's crazy that, like, the price of kosher food is so expensive. Yet you guys are coming in here and you're creating this like experience for people who obviously need it because it's a necessity because they keep kosher, but at the same time, they can't afford to go really like on the front side, facing side of it. They can't afford to go to these places. So you're giving them a place to come and shop with dignity, and I think
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
Yeah, there's certain things we can't change. We can't change the price that, a pound of brisket is coming from the slaughterhouse, but we can change the markup that's happening at the retail level. And I think what happened was, 5, 10 years ago, there wasn't a lot of competition in sort of the retail space. And the price was very different from the price that you were seeing in New York and New Jersey, where there was tons of competition in every block. Now that's changed. Now that there's been a huge migration of kosher customers into South Florida, the stores are more stores are opening up. They're getting more competitive, and we're seeing prices come down, and we're seeing more sales and things like that. And that's also just a success for us. We do want to be cheap and affordable, but hopefully that sets the lead, and that forces other retailers to lower the prices and make it more affordable.
No, for sure. And cheap is one of those words that I really don't like because I feel like how do you say? I guess cheapens out like the value of what you're doing. It kind of lowers the value of what you're doing. And I feel like, you know, uh, you guys are doing a great job by giving people who can't afford, necessarily to go to the big box grocery store an opportunity to get the same products but for less. And how do these other stores feel about what you're doing? Like because I know, like, I'm from Detroit, right? A long time ago, I remember there's one kosher grocery store. He actually happens to own a bunch of them in Florida also.
Yeah, yeah, I know.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. And I used to work for him. Oh, good times. No, but another guy wanted to open up like a little. It was called Kosher Co-op, and it was a little tiny grocery store, nothing crazy, nothing exciting, and the idea was exactly what you're doing. And this guy got like furious. He's like, "No, you can't do it. Blah blah blah. I'm gonna shut you down." Whatever. It was like a whole thing. And literally, this is like Detroit. This is like Detroit, like 20 years ago when there was like, you know, not as many people as there are now. And so I'm curious to know, like, how are these other stores receptive to what you're doing?
Yeah, great question. And something I definitely get a lot. So there's kind of two parts to it. One is actually it is true that our organization it did have some I don't want to say backlash, but concerns. And the original model was you had to be approved and vetted, that you financially needed. So that was one. But I think what changed, and again, this is part of a maybe larger um, halacha or Jewish law discussion, is
Yes.
maybe before you would have one physical store, and putting another physical store next to it would be direct competition. And that
Yes.
there are problems with that in Jewish law. However, in a world where now everybody's delivering, those
Mm-hmm.
boundaries are changing. And so if
Correct.
a grocery store in Miami, if they're delivering everywhere, then another grocery store in Fort Lauderdale that's also delivering everywhere doesn't sort of create the same direct competition. So um, that's a simplified explanation of why it's a little bit more okay now to have sort of direct or indirect competition like that.
It's funny that you say that because I was just actually having this conversation with a friend of mine. Because, like, I live in Israel in a place called Ramat Beit Shemesh, and when I first moved here, there wasn't a lot of people doing home businesses. There weren't a lot of people doing like different things like catering and whatnot. And there was a guy who was making American Chinese food, and he kind of missed the boat because on the influx of people coming in. So now another guy who happened to be a friend of his started making American Chinese food. He's a chef. He's a professional chef, and this guy got like super annoyed with him because one, he lived around the corner from him. Two, he was doing it, and he's like, "No, you can't do this." Blah blah blah. And I'm like, there's so many people here. There's so much business to go around that like everyone fancies something different. Like, and there's no problem with the competition. In fact, competition is good. And it's the same thing what you're saying is like there's so many people in South Florida. Like you don't have to come to your organization. And
Yeah.
is it still like designated mainly for people who really need the help, or it's kind of just been the doors are just open to everybody?
Yeah, it's open to everyone, and we really encourage people, even if you have the means, to shop at a fancier, grocery store to shop with us because one, with more deliveries, we have more scale. So our cost to deliver to a particular location goes down with more orders. So that scale does help. And secondly, um, there's a small margin, typically like a 15% that we put on, and that goes right back into the community. So we'll use that
Mm.
15% margin to sort of be a part of the $300,000 plus in free subsidies we're giving out to other people. So it's a win-win-win. Like you're shopping, you're getting a good deal. That extra little bit of margin of call it 15 compared to 60 plus at the retailers is now going to help someone who can't even afford that.
Mm.
And that's how we just create this ecosystem of people helping people.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So that was the actual thing I was wondering. So you deal with all the fundraising, you handle all the donor relations and the fundraising and everything like that. So when people are coming online and ordering their groceries, is that technically considered a tax deductible donation, or is that, like, how does that work in terms of your fundraising and your fundraising plans and things like that? Because I know you said the 15% thing goes back into covering the costs of the people who can't afford it, but like, what's the whole fundraising model?
Sure. So there's two things. No, it doesn't. Your regular grocery bill cannot be tax deductible. Uh, you can add a donation to your order, but
Oh yeah.
generally there are three categories of people. There are people who are just donors, there are people who are just shoppers, and there are people who do both. And generally the mindset is, for people who are shoppers, if we've saved you hundreds or thousands of dollars, over the past year in savings, then, hopefully you'll pay some of it forward. You'll give a little bit back. And we see that all the time. People who are just very grateful that the service exists, grateful that they can get their food at a reasonable cost, and therefore happy to give, once or twice a year when we're asking for donations before Passover and typically before Rosh Hashanah and the holidays. So that's kind of the hybrid model. I think the more people who know about it, um, or shop there end up being donors. And I'm glad you brought up sort of cheap, that word, because just because we're a discount, kosher grocery site doesn't mean the products are low end. So we also carry very high end products, very high cuts of meat, very good qualities of wine, because it shouldn't just be limited to sort of your basic menu. We want to make sure we can save people at all levels, whatever they're looking to eat.
Nice. So yeah, so I was gonna say, like, I mean, you kind of answered it, but like, what percentage of your customers become donors, and what percentage of the people that you help, on the level of, who need the subsidies, ultimately become donors themselves? Because I've seen this a lot with organizations, whereas because I'm on the marketing side sometimes, and it's like, okay, let's go after our donor base, our constituent base, the people we help, but a lot of the times the people that they help don't have $2 to rub together, but once they do, then they pay it forward. And
Yeah.
I've seen this, and I built marketing schemes around this with organizations where it's like, let's keep encouraging these people, let's keep helping them. And then, because we know that eventually, the goal is to get them out of the situation so they become givers. So what percentage of those people do you see that are your donors, and, versus the people who are shoppers and donors, or just donors?
Good question. I don't want to throw out a hard and fast number, but
No, it's all
anyone
good.
who's getting, sort of free credits are probably not donating. They're the ones that are the most vulnerable and need it the most. People that are shopping, I would say, like anecdotally, 75% of people who shop will donate some of it back. Yeah.
No, that's really awesome. That is really, really awesome, because, it makes sense, right? Like, it just makes sense that you would pay it forward, because and do people know, like, I'm assuming everyone who comes through to you guys, like, knows that you guys are, like, that's your whole mission, that you guys are a nonprofit, and everyone, like, there are people who are benefiting from their purchases because they can't afford it, right?
Yeah, but at the same time, because we are sort of e-commerce, and if you just went to the website, we look like a typical grocery store. So we do have this education issue where we have to raise awareness that we are different. It's not just a site. And what we did this year was Kosher for Less is really one of the solutions to sort of our umbrella organization, Helping Hands Resource Network. So we have a separate site that sort of lays out. There is Kosher for Less site, which helps people, who are struggling with the cost of kosher food. We have things like I don't know what the word in English is for Gamach. We have a free loan service
There you go.
for people who need it, and other sort of social programs. So we put them all there so that people can go and see our bigger picture and how we're trying to solve the affordability in South Florida.
Hmm.
But that's a good point. Like we really have to sort of educate people that we're not just we're not a for-profit grocery store, which you might think we are.
Well, that's like the key. I feel like a lot of organizations, they do great work, but the education side on the mission always falls short. And if people know what you're doing, then more people will probably connect with it more and then ultimately share the mission. Because I feel like, you know, you have these people coming into shoppers, and then some of them know what's going on the other end with the other like social projects you do. But I feel like if there was more education and awareness, more people would maybe be like, oh, cool, maybe I'll sponsor somebody's groceries, or maybe I'll make a donation that covers this basket of groceries or something like that, because now I know that wait a minute, you're just not a discount supermarket, you're something bigger than that.
Yeah, and we face that issue, with grants, for example,
Hmm.
applying to, Publix, which is the major grocery chain in South Florida. Um, if they look at our site, they'll be like, "Well, why would we give to you guys? Like, you're selling eggs and we're selling eggs." It doesn't make sense. So I think the rebrand was really good. I think now we're telling the story a lot better, and this will be kind of our. We just finished that rebrand about a couple months ago, and moving forward, I think we'll have more success now with a clear, more concise story.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So I feel like I didn't even ask you this question, but how did this whole thing get started?
Yeah. So the founder, Rabbi Aaron Greenberg, he's the visionary. He's the one who is dedicated, relentlessly dedicated to making it affordable and keeping prices down. He saw a need at the yeshiva in Miami, that people needed it, and there was kind of two issues with the existing food bank infrastructure. So one was that some organizations or food banks will either just give you a generic box of food, which is
Right.
great. Food's food, you need that, but it may not be what that family needs, or what they want. So that's one, is that those boxes didn't always meet the needs. And the second is, let's say you do get like a $100 gift card instead, but if you're going to go spend it at a grocery store that's taking 60-80%, huge markups and huge margins on these products, you're getting less back. And so that it was to solve these problems that he created what was originally called the Miami Kosher Co-op, which was a way to say, the way to really help people is you have to own the whole ecosystem. It has to
Yes.
be the food comes in, it's available to families at a very, very reasonable price, and then they can connect that back and put it back into the community.
But I feel like that's also such a smart mentality because, you know, as you said, with the food basket things, like, people get food baskets, but like, not everybody eats the same thing. Like not everybody's eating like, a lot of the times I've seen this with the food baskets, it's a lot of pastas, it's a lot of starches, it's a lot of like, low cost products, but
Yeah.
not every and people don't, and people are appreciative of it, but they don't want to be like, I don't actually eat this. And I've seen this actually here, where a lot of people, because in here there's a lot of single mothers, there's a lot of people who get these things, and half this stuff goes in the bin, and a lot, or they give it away, and then people are just like, well, you can't give it away because you got this. I actually had a neighbor like that. She used to get all this stuff. She's a single mother. She used to get all this stuff, and she would just give it all away. It's like, okay, listen, I understand it's your prerogative, but like, you can't just give this stuff away because like, people donated to it.
Yeah.
But like when you do this type of mentality where it's like, here, you go buy your groceries, just go do your thing, like this is what you're gonna buy, but like you're still you're gonna have what you need, and you're gonna do it with dignity, and nothing's going to go to the bin.
Yeah, and here's another way to think about it. I'll give, like, a very exaggerated example, but, let's say that the government says, "You know what? People are struggling, there's with clothing, okay? There's a lot of people that need clothing. So for every person that needs, we're gonna give you a $100 gift card to Nordstrom. You get whatever you need at Nordstrom, and, you'll be taken care of." So that's nice, but, like, what are they gonna get for $100 at Nordstrom? They really
Hmm.
need $100 at Walmart or $100 at Old Navy or whatever it is, and I think
Hmm.
that's how we look at it, is that not only does $100 is $100 of food amazing, but it's really more than that. It's really probably like $150 worth of food. So every time someone, like, donates $100, it's really getting so much more. So we really call it, like, tripling the impact, because they're getting more food because they're buying it in an ecosystem that has very little margin, very little markup, and then on top of that, a percentage is going back into the community and helping someone else who needs it. So that's how a little bit of the ecosystem. Um, and yeah, I think hopefully it could be a model for other communities, other organizations, or other things in life that can start to operate like that.
Have you guys ever thought about like franchising this type of model out to other communities?
Not franchising, but when
Teaching?
I was in Toronto, yeah, I was in Toronto last year and telling people what I did, and they're like, "This is amazing, we need to bring this here." So, I'm definitely happy to, impart the knowledge that I've learned to try to help other communities, create something like this. For us, I think our focus is gonna stay in South Florida. There's so much work to do. There's still many areas we don't deliver to, so we're not really gonna go national or global until we can kind of really fix all the problems in our backyard. But I just wanna one last point that I just wanna make sure I hit it is, you said the word dignity, and that's just, like, such a major point to what we do, is it's done with dignity. Like, even when you get a food box dropped off at your door, you you're robbed of some of that, you're robbed of some of that when someone has to drop off that food and knock on your door and leave. We want people to order what they want in the comfort of their home. And if you're someone who's, struggling, but you can at least afford food, you're feeling pretty good about yourself. If you could at least do that. So if groceries are affordable and you could at least afford that, I think you get so much of your dignity back. As soon as you remove that from someone and they're at the point where they can't even afford to buy food, like, in many ways, they've lost so much hope. And so, um,
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense
well,
because it's that mentality is that once because nobody wants to like be on handouts. Nobody wants to feel like, oh gosh, I'm getting a food basket because it makes you feel like crap. But like
yeah,
when you have control of what you're doing, and yes, you are getting a discount. It is a nonprofit. Doing all these things, but you're doing what you want to do on your own time, and it's coming in the same box that your neighbors are all getting it from, so no one looks weird. you know it gives you that, as you said, it gives you that level of hope that you're like, you know what, I'm here, I'm doing this, I can keep doing this, and it's great, and someone's taking care of me.
yeah, yeah, exactly. So that's what we're
Oh, that's
trying to
good
do.
stuff. That's good
Not
stuff.
easy,
So
but we're
no, it's good
committed.
stuff, man. It's very good stuff. I love it. I love everything that you guys are doing, and I think it's such an amazing thing. And to teach that to other, because I feel like there's other communities out there that could totally benefit from something like this. Because every community, whether Jewish, Christian, Muslim, whatever, every community, there's always people who are struggling. But if we're working together to uplift them and do it in a dignified way, I feel like this idea of because like the food banks, like no one likes to go to the food bank. No one likes to go to the food pantry and like pick off the line, but if you're doing this in a way like where everyone's ordering their groceries online, I think this is such a brilliant thing that could be imparted in communities all over the world, all over the place.
Yeah, no, thank you. And it starts with kosher for less and fill in the for less. It could. There's a lot of other things. We last week on Sunday we took 600 people to a Miami Marlins baseball game, for free with donated tickets. And but that's not enough. We wanted to make a tailgate beforehand, so we had a tailgate with sponsors, free hot dogs, drinks, snacks for everybody, because not everyone could afford to take a family of Orthodox Jews have very large families, 3, 4, 5, 6 plus kids, to a baseball game. So we made that possible. So kosher for less, baseball for less. If there's other things we can help do for less, we're going to do it.
Way to go. Way to go. So, as we wrap up this episode, what piece of advice would you give somebody who's looking to get into fundraising? Because you transitioned from a whole nother industry to fundraising into this. So, what piece of advice would you give somebody who's looking to get into fundraising at this point in their lives?
Yeah. So firstly, you have to do something that you care about. I mean, you have to have buy-in. You have to care about the mission of the organization. It has to be something that you're passionate about. Um, I don't think you could just be a fundraising mercenary. You can actually, but I don't think you're going to be happy, and I don't really think you're going to be successful. So, if you're doing something that you love, you believe in the mission, you're going to get it done. And at the end of the day, it is hard to take rejection. It's hard to hear people say no and give excuses and hang up and not follow through with pledges. But at the end of the day, you're really doing them a favor. You're giving them the opportunity to help somebody else, and you just can't take anything personally. So, um, have thick skin, stay at it, and you're going to do good with whatever cause you're raising money for.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Well, Ben, thank you so much for joining us on this show. We're going to put all the information about your organization, about Kosher for Less, in the landing page where you can learn more about Ben, learn more about the organization, watch the episode, and don't forget to like and subscribe to this on our YouTube channel, Beyond the Bottom Line Show. Watch out for it premiering on Brave Hearts TV, coming out in September when all our episodes go live on streaming. And until the next episode, you guys keep making the world a better place, keep changing the world, keep doing what you do, and we'll keep putting on this great show so you can hear more stories of people who are doing such amazing things in the world. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us, and we'll catch you guys on the next episode of Beyond the Bottom Line.
Thank you.